Hey there, everybody. This is Stephen Spender with ideaXme, and today I am delighted to be interviewing Canadian filmmaker Gary Burns. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Stephen.
How do people usually describe your work?
They use the word suburban and surreal at the same time sometimes. They talk about I guess social satire is usually probably the main moniker, I guess. But I've jumped around a bit, because I've done docs and drama, but I think
Yeah,
I keep the same kind of sensibility in both worlds, I guess. Usually fairly, I tend to look at stuff from not an overly serious sort of, at least on the surface, it's kind of poking fun at whatever I can get my hands on. But usually there's serious subject matter underneath it. And, but usually like Radiant City is a good example where it's like we did a documentary on suburban sprawl and but it's still pretty much a comedy.
yeah.
Even
Where does the comedy come from? Is that just because you enjoy it, or is it just it's just a natural thing that you do, or is it more thought out than that?
I think it's just my sensibility. I think even I think when I was at film school, part of it is you kind of go where I'm not saying everybody, but for me, that idea of sort of the path of least resistance, or you find some success in one avenue, and it's obviously easier to go that direction and continue going that direction. If you find some success. So, and I think it's just my general temperament. It's even the kind of stuff I enjoy. Like I don't know. It's a way in too. It's easier to laugh at yourself or laugh at a situation, no matter how tragic it is. It's kind of a coping mechanism, I guess.
I guess it, in a way, makes it more entertaining.
Oh, definitely. Certainly. It's accessible too, right? It's like people will go to, and I'm not saying, there's lots of approaches, but if you can get people to think they're coming along for a fun ride, and then there's something else there that's, it's maybe a little easier. Because even in a house, right? You look at you're at a theater and there's the crowd and you're listening, and when if it's working because people are laughing. Totally, like, because this thing we just did, it's a pretty heavy subject matter, and the best you can hope for in the crowd is you're kind of going, well, no one's fidgeting. They all seem to be looking at the screen.
Yeah.
And then after, of course, no one's like, you're kind of lost in your thoughts and people kind of walk out, and it's just a harder way to, it's hard to get the read on the room.
How many feature films have you done now?
I think I've done 8, not including, like I did a movie the week is in the US. I don't include that. And I've done some other TV, but just straight on theatrical in Canada films. Yeah. 8.
Does the process get any easier, or is it just different? Is each film just different?
It's certainly easier as far as stress levels and stuff and anxiety, like whether you don't get up in the morning, really worried.
Yeah.
It's generally, I mean, I actually have fun. Like I really enjoy shooting, being on set. It's kind of fun, and I find it quite relaxing. Promoting the films are harder. I don't find them that super fun.
Yeah.
But I think it certainly gets easier. Definitely, there's little tricks that you kind of go, I'm not going there because I know where that road leads. There's easier for sure.
How do you decide on what ideas you're going to do or write about?
Part of it's funding. It's really, I've been at this now for 25 years almost, I think, and the landscape's always changing. So where the funding is coming from it's just never consistent. Canada, right? It's all, a lot of it's based on government funding, and it really depends on, I mean, right now we've got a Liberal government federally, we have an NDP government provincially. At least the normal funding models are fairly stable.
Yeah.
But like Harper, the last Conservative government, which was like 10 years, things were changing very quickly. Like everyone was getting axed, making feature films kind of through telefilm model and, with some broadcasters. And then all of a sudden that money just kind of dried up. And then it was like, whoa, what am I going to do? So I went towards the NFB, National Film Board, and I made a couple of docs. But then they started getting their funding cut. And, so it's really kind of generally I have like I'm going after some money, and then it's like, well, what idea do I have that can fit that? Or, how can I chase that money? What idea is going to best suit that stream of cash?
So you have
Right?
to sort of present some kind of idea or scenario in order to get funding.
Kind of. I mean, I would say, well, it's just like, for example, this last film, just because we sort of knew what the budget, like a kind of a ballpark budget would be for a drama in, shooting in Western Canada with no stars, say, right? And
Yeah.
also on who I am and what I can actually raise, which is, it's pretty modest, right?
Right.
So, and then it's kind of like, okay, that's the number. And then of course you have ideas. I have this one script, but that's too big a budget. That wouldn't work in this model. We actually, for this one, it was kind of like, okay, it's a pretty modest budget. I have a neighbor who runs an ultra marathons, which I'd never heard of 3 years ago. I'd never heard of an ultra marathon. And we have a neighbor who runs, these things all the time. She started telling you about him, and we're like, whoa, hold on. What do you do? What? So you run for 100 miles over 24 hours, pretty much nonstop. Sleep, you don't stop really. Like they sit down for a few minutes, or they may just like curl up in a ball by the side of the trail. Like it's really kind of crazy. Anyway, so it just seemed like, well, that's kind of a cool idea. And so the story came out of, a confluence of what do I think I can raise money doing, and what's something I'm interested in, right? So like this idea of having people running in a mountain setting, and we went and watched one of these races, and basically after, except for the starting line where there's like 1,000 people, or, maybe 500 or whatever. As soon as they're like within 20 minutes of the race, all of a sudden they're just running kind of by themselves. Then there's just like two people, and they
Yeah.
pass people, and like for the entire race, it's just like one person running down a trail
Yeah.
for the most. And then they come to these, they have these aid stations every like 25 kilometers or something. So you have a tent, like literally a pop-up tent with like 10 people standing around.
Yeah.
Like it's really minimal, So it wasn't like we're going, okay. It's just like the whole scenario seemed like, oh, you could do this on a fairly long.
When you actually sit down to write it, do you have do you storyboard? Or do you just like bang it out? Or do you have a
This was really
technique?
fast. This one, I co-wrote this with my wife Donna Brunsdale, and we wrote it in probably 6 weeks, pretty quick, like really quick. But I think it was. I keep a notebook, and you kind of just, and even I use big yellow pads of paper to sketch out some stuff. And then just basically get into it, right? It's like, okay, the guy's going to start running a race.
Yeah.
And that's, it's something's going to happen. And, but also, we very early, so it's like, okay, we're going to run this race. What's the whole thing that's interesting to me is that you have this internal, over 24 hours you're running and you're by yourself. So you're just running things through your head. Like, what do you think about when you run for, 24 hours?
Yeah.
And what are some possibilities there? So it was kind of coming up with, very early we came up with the idea that, okay, you got a guy or a gal and they're running and they're in some kind of crisis. What is it? They're going to work something through in their head over this 24 hours. That's the basic idea. So then you're like, what are they going to work out over 24 hours? Came up with the concept, and by just sort of, some things we were interested in and some things that were topical. So in the end, we have a guy, he's a doctor, he's running, he's in trouble. He's just shows up at the beginning of the race and people are phoning him and kind of going, hey, like, where are you? Police are here. What should we tell them? And then you pretty quickly find out he's a doctor and he's got some mental health issues. Because when he goes to register for the race, they're kind of going, whoa, oh, sorry, there's a flag, kind of red flag with this guy. Someone called us and they were worried about your ability to finish the race. So something's up, but you don't know what's up. And then over the course of the race, you kind of find out what his deal is. So then it's, you kind of work out those ideas pretty early on. Yeah, and it came together kind of quick because I've had scripts that, you work on them for years, and you try to get it made and you can't get enough interest, and then you shelve it and then you bring it back out and try again. You hear about it. I always was curious about that because you'd hear about people, like directors that had long careers, and they'd be talking about some idea, and they go, "Oh yeah, I had this idea, 20 years ago," and it, it was in a drawer, and I pulled it out, and I was because I'd always kind of gone from script to script. I'd sort of make a film, and then I'd write something and make it, and then write something and make it, and then but then after after a while it happens. You have a script that people just you can't get anybody excited about, so you kind of shelve it. So with this though, this happened like super quick. Like we wrote it in say 2 months, and then we were shooting it 6 months later. It was happened really quick. But that's kind of the exception, I would say.
And did you find much of a difference? Because, dealing with just sort of, I don't know if you call it a straight drama, but a drama other than a comedy. Was the process the same, like to actually shoot it, or did you find it, the shooting of it, was it similar, or was there a lot of differences?
I guess what's funny is, because I was saying earlier, like I actually quite enjoy being on set, and it's just kind of fun, get all these people together, and you're all eating together and making this thing, and it's just kind of fun. And because I've always worked from kind of a comic sensibility most of the time, a big part of the job was always like, oh, you want people to be having a good time making a comedy. So it was always kind of like, well, you want to have a good atmosphere on set. So this was different in drama, and it's actually very, like, some really heavy stuff. The guy's suicidal, and there's reenactments of suicides and attempts, and his patient, he's got a young patient who's, trying to get assisted death, and it's really heavy duty. And but you're still having fun. So I found that kind of a challenge, is kind of to be, okay, now we're in the moment, this is really serious. We're still trying to have a decent, time here as a group, right? So I've never done very, very little drama. Like, oh my God, like I've done a little bit. Like I did this USA movie the week. It was a drama, but it was kind of a heist film. So there's still comedy in it. I did a series for CBC up north, like up in the Yukon. And there was one episode I did 6.5 hours. And one of the episodes deals with, a guy and his grandfather dying or something like that. And I found it quite difficult. Like, just, I don't know, just it's a different, you got to be in a different headspace.
Okay, I'm just going to run down a few of your credits here, just so people have an idea of what you've done. So I'm looking at your first feature, Suburbanators, which I was in 1995, was one of the top 10 films in the Toronto Festival, went to Sundance. Then in 97, received the Best Emerging Director for Kitchen Party at the Vancouver Film Festival. Then in 2000, Way Downtown was given the Best Canadian Feature Prize and at the Toronto International Film Festival. In 2006, Radiant City, which you co-directed with Jim Brown, garnered the Special Jury Prize at the Vancouver International Festival. And then you've done a lot of stuff after that, but that's pretty good, man. Not bad. Was there... you probably have heard that about 1,000 times, but I was just, because, way back when we were doing Suburbanators, I guess that was your first feature film, I guess, or
yeah, oh yeah,
that was the first one, right? So, I mean, after that, since then, was there ever a time where you felt I've made it? Yeah, I guess that feeling of, okay, I've sort of arrived now.
I remember sitting we were renting an apartment in Mission here in Calgary. And I was sitting at my desk writing, basically, and the New Yorker came in the mail. And I was always sort of sensitive about my name, like just Gary Burns, kind of boring. It's like, for like when you hear other, filmmakers' exotic names. But then there was Ken Burns, and then there was this other guy, what's his name? American director, also Burns, at the same time. And I was like, whatever. Anyway, I'm leafing through the New Yorker, and in the movie section, there's an illustration, and it's for Kitchen Party, but all I see underneath is Gary Burns for Kitchen Party. And when I see my name, I thought, I can't believe this. There's another Gary Burns. Like how many? Like it took me a minute to kind of go, whoa, oh, that's me. And then I phoned my mom right away.
Do you have a favorite film of all the films you've made so far? Or is that an unfair question?
Radiant City and Way Downtown are probably the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they both work the best. Radiant City, I think, is there's something about the fact that it's a serious subject matter and it tackles something, but it's kind of smart in its in its form.
And where was the inspiration for that?
Jim and I were standing in our kitchen, like Don and I's kitchen, and when we lived over in Ramsey. It hasn't changed in Calgary. The thing is, if you live in the core,
Yeah.
Calgary still doesn't have a contemporary art museum. This is a city of, now it's pushing 1.5 million people. The core suffers because of all the money going into the ring road and the interchange, and all the crap that goes along with the way the city's designed. So we were both just, kind of harping about how there was, and it's 13 years ago. The city's improved quite a bit actually since then, but actually the sprawl's gotten much worse. Yeah, it was just something that, you could gripe about all the time, and it was like, man, we should make a movie out of it.
What's your favorite part about making a film? What do you enjoy most about it?
I like editing. I started editing myself, so with this man running, Don and I edited, and we did a documentary on an artist. I've done a couple of them recently that I edited. I quite like the sort of like you've shot everything, and then you're just in your pajamas in the basement. I quite enjoy that, but it's funny. I enjoy almost all. Like I even like the producing. Like I like being on the horn and just making phone calls, and I like that stuff too. So I think that's the most fun thing about filmmaking is if you're just an editor. I would say say you're an editor. Yeah. It's a great job. It's fun. Or you're a director and you direct episodic TV or something or whatever, but you don't edit and you don't write. Still fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just like the variety because I enjoy writing. I enjoy the sort of producing, putting the thing together, and I enjoy once it all comes together because the shoot's fast, right? It's like the only thing about shooting, I'm not a morning person, so I'm not super keen on getting up at 6, but it's only for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you do it again for another year or two. So I enjoy the shoot too.
If you could meet anyone, past or present, who would it be? I know that's a really tough question, kind of out of the blue, but
John Cassavetes. Yeah, that'd be one.
Is there anything you just like to have a conversation?
Oh, totally. He's like, the father of independent American cinema. It's, he's made some of my favorite films. He's still one of my favorite films, just The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. And he died young too, but he worked with everybody too. I think John Cassavetes would be a lot of fun.
Is there anything you'd like to ask him in particular?
Oh, man. No,
that's
not
a tough one.
He was really interesting because he distributed his own films too. I guess you'd sort of want to know what kept him going, because what he did is he would be in Kelly's Heroes or something, like in all these Hollywood. He would just act to make money to make his films. He had an interesting circle of friends, but he had real ups and downs too. And I probably would have asked him if I would have tried to talk him out of to lay off the drinking a bit, maybe. I guess he died of cirrhosis of the liver. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you had to give advice to young filmmakers just starting out, do you have anything that you would say?
I always tell people just to get out and make stuff like tomorrow. Like just start making things because I think a lot of people dither a bit. They're waiting for the right thing or they have an idea, they sort of don't follow through. And you just find that a lot. Like a lot of people, even people I went to film school with say, don't work in the industry, don't get a film job because it takes up too much of your time and you make too much money and then you don't have time for your own projects. Because that always happens. You get a job, even just pulling cable, think you got enough money to buy a motorbike or whatever.
Yeah.
You got to keep working because you got to pay off your motorbike. It's just don't work in the industry. And start making stuff right away because you can now. Make a film with your phone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just the way to go.
And do you have anything coming up? Any new projects, or you just is it all about man running right now?
A few scripts. I'm the main thing right now. Actually, is doing I have an idea for kind of Radiant City 2. Really, I'm going to call Chronicle of Here, and with a more environmental angle. And
so, what were you thinking about calling it? I missed that.
Oh, Chronicle of Here.
Oh, okay.
And I really like, there's this, shoot, I can't think of the guy's name right now. There's a film called Chronicle of Here, Paris, Summer 1961.
Okay.
Shoot, I can't think of this guy's name. It starts out, it's just got these two women and they're asking people in Paris if they're happy. They're just going up and interviewing people. And it's really great. It's kind of like, it's 1961, but it's really, they're talking a lot about Algeria, France is, they're still just getting over World War II, and it's quite a political film. But it's Claude Rouge. Is it Claude? I'm trying to think of this guy's name. But he considered himself, he was what do you call it? An ethnographer, and that was kind of his approach. So it's a documentary. So I'd like to do something that goes after the suburban, the urban, city planning again with ethnic, because Radiant Cities is totally white, middle class. It's really interesting about Calgary right now, and you probably know this anyway, is how the northeast of the city has become kind of an ethnic enclave. It's just like the brown northeast, and how it's completely cut off from the rest of the city. There's not a lot of integration, and I find that really interesting. So that's what I'm proposing right now. I'm just trying to put together. I'm just trying to raise money for that.
Cool. Thank you so much for doing this, Gary.
Yeah, well, it was kind of fun.
Thanks a lot. And that concludes my interview with award-winning Canadian independent filmmaker Gary Burns. If you're in the Alberta area in Canada, his new film Man Running opens in Calgary April 12th, then Edmonton April 26th, and other places after that, I'm sure. And if you want to find out more information, he has a Facebook page at Man Running Movie. That's at Man Running Movie. This is Stephen Spender with ideaXme. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.